Okay, here's the Milestone Smart Client, and what I've got set up right here is just a general view, 3 windows, and here is the window that we want alarm views to pop up in, for example, which can be changed to any of these panes. It doesn't really matter. It can be set to have a default view in it as well of a regular camera, and then in the event of an alarm, it can be set to pop up a different camera, and then when the alarm stops, the default camera will come back into this square. So for demo purposes, just going to move over to Winpak, and we've set up this to be our testing trigger, which is just a relay that's set for us to energize or de-energize. So right now I'm going to close the relay and energize that. Okay, so that has energized, and then I look over here and the camera view that I've set to pop up is the camera that's outside the security office. And I'll just back it up so you can kind of see the image here again. So if I go back and I de-energize in Winpak, I'll just right click again, de-energize. Okay, and now the default camera for that screen has come back. So again, I'll back it up so you can see it in full demonstration mode, so there's no trickery here. So if I go to Winpak, okay, which is in this window, and I energize that output, which could be a door ajar or door forced open. Okay, as soon as I energize that, that switches to the camera that's been set to go in alarm. Okay, and when that is de-energized from here, again, that'll switch back to the default camera. So that's how it works. So to set up the camera triggering in Milestone, first you need to set up the trigger events, triggers and procedures in Winpak. So if you're in control map, we've added this one as kind of the ground zero testing. So if you look, we've got that under outputs, under camera output, and then camera test output 2 off of that relay. So if you go to device map, open up ICB1, go to triggers and procedures, basically copy the procedure of this camera test, and then copy the trigger of this camera test section for all the new ones that you're going to do. Once that's set up, go to configuration, define control areas. Once you've set up those, go to outputs, camera outputs, right click, add devices, find your outputs, and then you would see them in this list here. Click add, so it adds them into the camera output section. And that's setting up the Winpak side of it after it's been wired and the device is installed in the DGP. Once you have set up or installed this Axis P8221 IO module, you would just go to the IP address of the module, and then you would type in the username password. Username is default root, R-O-O-T, and the default password is 1234. That'll get you into this setup here. Once you're logged in on Internet Explorer, you just go to ports and devices. Okay, right now, the first one that we have is set up in port 1. We just named it camera test, and we're telling this Axis module that it is a normally open circuit. And right now you can see it says inactive. So if we go over to Winpak and we energize this output, we're going to see this switch to active when we click the live view. Okay, so right now that input is active because it's got a blue dot on it. If I right click and de-energize the output, see that's gone away now, so we know that they're talking. That's just the wiring between the output on the 2200 board, and we're telling it which input we wired it to in the access module. Okay, so that's how to make sure there's communication happening there. Go back to setup. If you're setting up another one, just go to ports and devices. It is an input. You can name it if you want, and then tell it if it's open or closed. Save at the bottom. Then you would go to live view config. Don't need any of this stuff up here. All we need is to tell it which input ports we have active. So you would put a check mark in the next one that you do, and then click save at the bottom. After you've done that, then you would open Milestone and then do the next batch of settings there. Okay, to do the last batch of settings in Milestone, you would just open up the Milestone Xprotect Pro management application on the video server. Once you've done that, you would scroll down in the side pane here until you see Hardware Input Events. Just double click on that. In this list, we have to find the access module, which is right here. And if you expand that, now we see all of our inputs. Falling signal input is, I believe, 1 to 4 is a normally closed, and then rising is the normally open being energized, and falling is when the normally open has been de-energized. So we need to enable rising and falling for each input. So right now we have input 1 falling, input 1 rising. So when we first energize the output in Winpak, that activates the rising signal. Okay, so if you click on that, enable event, you can name it whatever you like, click OK. If you click on the falling, same thing, enable the event, name it whatever you want, click OK. They can also be set to send an email or a text message. Okay, so once you have the rising and falling set up, basically what that's doing, the rising is when you first enable the output or energize the output in Winpak, let's say in a door ajar event, let's say that that's our trigger. So door ajar comes into Winpak, it'll come through the access module into Milestone as a rising signal. So it's activating or energizing that output. So rising signal will push the camera that you tell it to up on screen, and then once you've de-energized the output in Winpak, then that tells the falling signal to remove that image and put back the default image in the smart client on the screen. So that's the rising and the falling. Rising sets the image that you want in the event of an alarm, and then falling signal tells it to remove that image and put back the default camera image that was originally in that spot before the alarm. So that's how that works. Those can be timed as well, so you can say add a timer at the bottom, and you would say, okay, I don't want you to remove that camera image for 5 minutes after the alarm comes through. But anyway, we're not going to do that right now. So once that's been set up, then you'll see them in here. Okay, so hardware input event summary. So that's those two that we set up for camera 1. Don't pay any attention to this. This was testing. Don't worry about that built-in motion sensor thing. It can detect on motion as well. Okay, so once we have that, then we now go down to matrix. Okay, so double click on matrix. In here, you want to make sure it's enabled, okay, which it is. We've set up one of them to work already. To add another one, all we need to do is right click, properties, and then add a new one here. Okay, so you would just add a name, let's say 4th floor RWS. Okay, 4th floor. The address of that is, I don't know, let's say that. And it has to be an open port. I'm just guessing. Password, I just set 12345 for now. And yes, the matrix recipient is a smart client, okay? Because we're using the smart client on that workstation to see the images. So then you click add. Okay, now it pops up here. That's great. So now we click on matrix event control. Okay, now there's our new matrix control. Right click. And then here we have to select the axis module. So you go down here, it's going to be at the bottom of the list, scroll all the way down. There it is, axis. Okay, here's our options that we want to pick. Okay, rising signal on input. If we, let's say, set up a second input. That's the rising signal, again, is the one that energizes, that puts the camera on the screen in the event of an alarm. So we're going to click on, right click on that, click connect. Sorry, right click on connect, there we go. And so now we're going to pick the camera that we want to pop up. So we'll say we want a 4th floor camera to pop up. Let's say 403 boardroom hallway. Okay. Now we're going to add the falling connection. What to do when the output is de-energized. So right click on the workstation. Okay, find the axis module again. Falling signal. Okay, now we have the falling signal tied to the workstation. Right click on falling signal, click connect. Right click on connect, and let's say we want to go back to our default image, which is, I don't know, one of these images here. Let's say the reception foyer. Okay, so now in the event of an alarm, camera 403 will pop up, and once that is de-energized, camera 119 will take its place. So just click OK at the bottom. Click save at the top. That's been set up. Okay, so now there's a list of our matrix recipients, different workstations that are going to use Smart Client to see images as the alarms are triggered. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, you would actually have to go into the Smart Client on the workstation and tell the Smart Client what to look for. Okay, so we're going to open the Smart Client to tell it what to look for. So in the Smart Client, you would go to your groups on the side. Okay, you would click the setup here. That puts our screen, our Smart Client, into a setup window. So we can select test. Okay, so you can see here, this is our first camera that we have set up in a matrix window. Let's say we want this one to be set up as a matrix window as well. So you would come over here, scroll down, and here we have this little matrix under System Overview. Click on that, and then drag that over to the window. So now this is matrix window 2. Okay. And we have these all set up, so that's fine. Once you finish that, click on the setup again, And now we have these matrix windows set up. So once you go into Winpak and energize your output, you should see a matrix window show up. Which it's not doing right now.